we have the Chamber Network here in the room today. We have some time for questions if anybody would like to raise one. Maybe while you're thinking about that question, I can provide you one last one. You mentioned you have your colleague here in the room who engages with the Chamber Network. If I were looking to engage the CIB in a major infrastructure project, where would I start? And do you see a specific role for chambers of commerce and boards of trade across the country? Like, what should that relationship look like, and where should we begin?
Well, the bank is, I believe, a silver sponsor for the event here today, and the rationale for that and why I'm here and Laurie's been here since yesterday is, I think, reflects the importance that we put on the chamber, its local members, and bringing the awareness, and we hope that you will be our ambassadors and advocates throughout the country. So I think that is, I think, shows you the importance that we put on events that the Chamber undertakes throughout the country. So I think, I'm not sure if that last slide can be put up. I believe it has an email contact for contacting the investments at cib-bic.ca. You can get a hold of me for projects in Western Canada at jparmar@cib-bic.ca. So a number of ways for folks to contact the bank.
That's great, and we'll make sure to share that contact information with delegates as well. Mike number 2, if you could introduce yourself and your question, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Thompson. I'm with the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce and a very strong advocate and Indigenous entrepreneur. Throughout Canada, we have over 3,000 Indigenous reserves. And as we're all aware, there's a great deal of activity going on throughout the nation relative to energy, mining, etc. What is the CIB doing to ensure that we talk about inclusion, we talk about reconciliation, but the reality is a lot of our communities don't have the capacity, they don't have the skills, they don't have the experience. We've been excluded for a long time. What is the CIB doing to ensure that the Indigenous businesses, economic development corps, private businesses that are really truly committed to reconciliation, what is the CIB willing to do to ensure there's meaningful participation? Because I see a great deal of opportunity, but unfortunately, due to the fact that we've been excluded for such a long time, oftentimes I feel our people are really risk adverse and they're not sure how to engage, right? And I'd also like to personally invite the CIB to participate. We host an event at the Chamber called Prosperity Northwest every year, and we're trying to bring more Indigenous businesses and organizations to the event. But I'm really interested to hear, how do we engage the over 3,000 communities so that we still have the largest demographic of youth suicides in the nation? And all I want is our people to wake up with hopes of prosperity in the Miigwech.
Great. Thank you for that question. So in general, the bank looks to make investments of at least $100 million into a project, that has a capital expenditure of $200 million, but we recognize that was not necessarily going to meet the needs of Indigenous communities. And so what we did was that we reduced that minimum $100 million investment criteria down to 5 million. So that was, and the projects that we were looking to invest in could be as small as 6.25 million rather than $200 million. We have a great team. I'm fortunate to have Indigenous colleagues at CIB, one of whom is Hilary Thatcher, who leads our Indigenous investments across Canada. Hilary is based in Ottawa. Majority of her team is in Toronto, but they have a national focus. And so there we've made investments in wastewater in BC as an example. I've already talked about the investment in Alberta, but then as far east as Quebec, Labrador, an Indigenous-owned rail project as well. And then as we discussed a little earlier here in the Q&A, we're now providing financing so Indigenous communities can make direct equity investments in projects. So I recognize that doesn't address all of the needs of First Nations, Métis, and Innu communities across Canada from coast to coast to coast. There are obviously other federal and provincial initiatives also, but we think we've gone a long way, and we understand that it's a journey. And so we will continue as an organization to do what we can to address the infrastructure gap that exists for Indigenous communities in a manner that's mindful of reconciliation.
Thank you for the question. Mike, number 2.
Hi. Wondering whether you think CIB has a role to play in affordable housing and land development.
Thank you for that question. It is a question that we are currently grappling with. Obviously, our relatively new minister, Sean Fraser, is now the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure, and Communities, and we have turned our minds to that at his request. So what I can say is stay tuned in regards to what the bank may be able to do in regards to housing, affordable housing, rental housing.
Can I build off that question? I know from your deck that I'm privileged to have a copy of that there was also a project, I believe, with Dream Properties looking at retrofits. And when we look at 2030 goals, so much of our infrastructure, it's already baked in, kind of the footprint, the carbon footprint of that. So I'm not sure if it addresses the housing question, but in terms of looking at some of our properties, whether those are corporate or housing, is there work that the CIB is doing in that space or able to do in that space that addresses both, our real estate issues in the country right now, but also the net zero?
So in October of 2020, it was announced that the bank was going to be making investments in building retrofits, but primarily to reduce the carbon footprint associated with buildings across Canada. Another component of that is industrial retrofits as well. And this is an innovative offering. There's been, I was just at UBC on Thursday for the afternoon to discuss this. So this is where we're prepared, and I'll speak to the private sector portion of this. We will provide up to 80% of the capital required to undertake deep retrofits And we'll provide financing that is dependent upon the level of reduction in GHGs that you provide. So if you're able to provide a 30% reduction in GHGs, our financing is at the prevailing Government of Canada rate plus 1%. If you achieve through those retrofits a 40% reduction in GHGs, then we'll provide the financing at Government of Canada rate. And if you achieve 50% or greater, including net zero, then that financing will be at Government of Canada minus 100 basis points or minus 1%. Our repayment will be predicated upon a number of things, such as the utility savings that are achieved through the reduction in the carbon tax. And in some cases, there are investment tax credits as well. And we'll invest in energy efficiency, everything from lighting, but also to HVAC systems, building envelope, windows, roofs, things like that, everything that reduces GHGs, the heating and cooling decarbonizations as you switch from a fossil fuel to electrification or another technology that allows you to achieve that decarbonization. Solar on the rooftop, storage for that. As we know, the sun doesn't shine 24 hours. And then also electric vehicle charging as well within your facility as well. So that entire suite of asset types are available to reduce the carbon footprint of a building, and we're prepared to invest. Again, there is a minimum investment size. We're looking to invest a minimum of 25 million. So for a private sector company or building owner that has a sufficient building portfolio, they can invest that. On the industrial retrofit side, we provided a credit facility to Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. I'm sorry, in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And although I did go to a Model UN on the Michigan side, but I actually just met somebody at the UN in Vancouver, so that's why. Sorry for the slip of the tongue there. There we provided a credit facility to Algoma so they could convert from coal-fired furnaces to electric arc furnaces. So that's an example of an industrial retrofit as well.
Great, thank you. It's really remarkable, the breadth and the span of the CIB's investments. Thank you, Jody, on behalf of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce for sharing some updates with us. I think the CIB's been a mystery to many for a long time, and it's great to see some of the actual work that's being done and the real impact of this investment. Thank you again for joining us today.
Great. Thank you for having me.